Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversation with Shenila, where we explore stories, leadership, and experiences that have shaped our profession. I would say. Sorry for this fumble, everyone. So I'm Sheila Makhani, and today is a very special episode. Millions of professionals around the world proudly hold the PMP credentials, including me. It has become one of the most respected certifications in project management. But every great profession has a beginning. Every globally recognized credential started with an idea. And today we have the privilege of speaking with someone who helped turn the idea into reality. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Lee R. Lambert, one of the visionaries behind the creation of the PMP credential. Lee, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I always like to talk about the PMP.
Great, great. Thank you, Lee. It is truly a privilege to have you with us today. On behalf of the audience joining from different parts of the world, thank you for taking the time to be here and for your tremendous contribution to the project management profession. Um, Before we begin our journey through the history of the PMP, I would love to start with a simple question. How have you been and what has been taking you busy these days, Lee?
Oh, I've been great. I tend to stay busy. I get a lot of people calling with questions, but mostly I just fly around the world and talk about project management. It's better than working. And In the last 3 years, I've been in 55 countries. And so I'm on the go a lot. But the topic is even after 60 years, the topic of project management excites me. I think it has so many opportunities for everyone that I love to talk about it.
Great. And let me just comment on this side that, this part that Lee is so generous, right? He just a call away to give any advice, to answer any question, or you can say just a text away, right? You can say, I am the one who is miles and miles away when I would say geographically, but when we have to connect, Lee is just a message away. Thank you so much, Lee. So it's wonderful to hear. One of the things I admire about the true leaders is that they never really retire from learning or contributing. They simply find new ways to give back. It's inspiring to see the spirit continue throughout your journey, Lee, and it's really impressive. Today, I would like to take our audience on a journey, not just through the history of the PMP, but through the evolution of project management itself. Lee, I would like to begin by taking you back several decades. When you first entered the profession, what did project management look like?
Well, I'm one of those accidental project managers. I really got intrigued by it when I was with General Electric, and had some rather large nuclear reactor projects, and they didn't really know how to do them. They didn't understand that with project management there's a methodology to make sure you don't miss anything or you don't skip anything. And so when it comes to putting a nuclear reactor together, I don't know how you would do that without a plan. So it started out as planning. That was in those days, back in I'm talking about the 60s now. Some of you probably weren't born then, but I had to figure out a way to do that. Well, at the time, all there was some real basic linear planning systems like Harvard Project Manager, things like that. And so I had to make do with that. But the more you get into it, the more you realize it's not it's not simple, but it's not too complex either. I use the term common sense. If you could run a project using common sense, you'd probably do pretty well, actually, because I think that's a lot of the decisions we make are common based decisions. So when I started I started in '66 as a engineering designer. And what that meant was you didn't go to school to get your 4 year degree. You just went to. And so I started with that, and I realized very quickly that I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't. I turned out I chose the wrong class in school, and so I started looking right away for other opportunities. And what I found was I started out with a national laboratory in Livermore, California, and what their product was nuclear bombs. And I thought, well, that'd be exciting to work on nuclear bombs. And and we were doing underground testing. It was still when we were able to do underground testing. So I started to run some projects to build and put into the ground some equipment that would hold a nuclear apparatus. And I really liked that because I had a lot of freedom to do what I needed to do to make it be successful. But then I got tired of that, and I got thinking. I was putting thermocouples on a high explosive nuclear head to read the heat transfer across it when it exploded, and I got thinking to myself, man, it's a one mistake job. If you make a mistake, then you're done for sure. So I decided I better get out of that, and that's when I went to GE. And GE really turned me around. We had introduced to General Electric an earned value project that we had to be validated on our earned value system. Well, we didn't have an earned value system, so we had to design one. We had to teach 300 engineers how to use it and how to get their validation from the U.S. government. And so nobody knew anything about it, including me. But they asked for volunteers to train the other 300 engineers, and that sounded kind of intriguing to me because I've always been a good talker. So I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity. So I raised my hand and became the lead trainer for General Electric on earned value. And from there on, I just kept going more complex, more complete, more sizes, more variations, and went from 10 years with General Electric. So I had a good training background. Then I moved to another national laboratory up in Mission, Washington, and I formed there what later was called the first PMO. It was in 1977. They needed some way to organize all their silos of technical expertise. So we formed a PMO, and we didn't call it a PMO. I called it a Management Information System. So which unfortunately that's IT. Everything's IT. It wasn't about IT. It was about project management. But we perfected that to where that got a validation from the U.S. government. And then they put me in charge of a very, very big job of finding out where are we going to put all the nuclear waste from the reactors, all the fuel rods once they're radioactive, because they stay radioactive for like 100 years. You got to figure out where you're going to put these things. Well, for a long time, they had storage on site. For every nuclear reactor had their own storage place. Well, when I took this job over, they were running out of storage space, and so we're looking for a place to bury that. Or we even looked at the ocean, but we X'd that out pretty fast. But we were looking for geologic formations that were strong enough to withhold a big waste facility and to contain all that radiation. Everybody was worried about radiation. And so we got that done. We were looking at 5 different sites. We made a final recommendation in October of that year, and we recommended the Nevada test site outside of Las Vegas. And we figured, well, I mean, they've been testing radioactive stuff out there for years, so we figured that'd be the right place. It had the basalt geology, and so we made a decision and a recommendation. The government accepted it, and so they were getting ready to actually implement, and they had to put it on the ballot. It had to be agreed by the public that they were willing to accept that. because we had a joke at the time. Anybody'd say, "Yeah, I think we need to do something with it, but not in my backyard. Don't put it in my backyard." So that's kind of what happened. We put it on the ballot, and I'll be darned if they didn't vote it down. So this was in about must have been about 84, 83, somewhere in there. And we've been without a storage facility since then. Nobody's done anything with it. They're now beginning to shut down reactors because they don't have any place to put the fuel rods when they're done with the radiation. So that's sort of where I got a chance to be sort of a public relations person. I got a chance to be a manager of a group. So I really cut my teeth on a lot of different things. But in every single one of them, if I move away all the smoke, there's project management at the base. Everything is about project management. Even when you're a little kid, you do projects. The wife does picnics. I mean, it's project management. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure that out. And so that's how I got involved in it. And if I can segue to the PMP now, what happened was I realized at the National Laboratory that I enjoyed doing what I was doing. I enjoyed talking about things. I enjoyed teaching people. And so I got a hold of PMI. I've been a member of PMI since '78. They were formed in
Oh,
'69, so I was about 9 years later. And so I got a hold of them and said, what we need is a certification, a professional certification, to prove that we're not just do it in your spare time kind of people. Because at that time, when you were asked to do project management, it was like a secondary job. It wasn't your primary job. If you're an engineer, you do all this engineering, and then they say, "Oh, and by the way, could you manage this project for us?" So we began to realize it until we got the respect of being recognized as a profession that's the way it was going to be. So that's how it all started. These five guys, myself included, got together. We got together in Atlanta, where one of the guys had a construction company. Got together in Houston, where another guy. It was primarily construction. There were three
okay.
construction people and two IT people, pharmaceutical people. And so the five of us spent quite a bit of time. We started in '81, we went live in '84. So we spent a lot of time making sure it was the right thing. We went out and interviewed accountant organizations, engineering societies to see what did you do to make this all work. And what we came down to was the same thing we started with. We need to be certified. We need to be recognized as a profession. So that started the whole thing because we knew to be a profession you have to have an exam. People have to pass an exam to say they can be a professional. So that was the first thing we started to do was create the exam. The other thing that people don't realize, they think about the exam simplistically, but we had the exam, we had the PDUs we had to come up with. We had the application for approval to take the exam. We had the ethics. I mean, it was a huge job. And before we were done, I think we had about 12 people that were working on it. But the head guy was a guy named Martin, Dr. Dean Martin, up in Western Carolina University. And so he was the project manager for the certification program. But unfortunately, he passed away before we finished everything, and so we all just sort of pulled together and kind of got the thing squared away. You need to remember that all of the questions, even now, by the way, all of the questions on that exam are given to us by volunteers. We go out and hold sessions and say, give us, you think you got a couple good questions for us, and then we sort through those and change the exam. So it's a volunteer organization. I think everybody knows that. And so everything we do of any consequence, I think, is volunteer. People like you and me saying, "Hey, I'd like to do that," or "We need this. I'll take the lead in that." And so we've done a lot with volunteers. Now we're up to 800,000 people now. That's the biggest membership we've ever had, I think. And so it's starting to grow now, starting to recognize. Since Pierre Lemon came on as CEO, he's done some wonderful things, and he's got us moving in the right direction. So, well, a part of that, I'll mention it here because I'll probably say it again. Part of that is without PMP, there is no PMI because when we didn't have the PMP, we didn't have enough money to even operate hardly. We had a few people that we were paying a salary, but generally speaking, it was dues, hundred and some dollars a year, and then occasionally we get donations from some big organization that wanted to see some support done. So we couldn't really do that much until the last, and well, until we got the PMP. If you take 1.7 million PMPs, then you multiply that by $500. That's real money. That's real money. And so all of a sudden, PMI had all this money. Now it wasn't all of a sudden. I'll go through that in a minute. But they got all this money, so they started to see there's things that we can do. We can sponsor scholarships. We can sponsor special programs. And so it sort of let them know that if the certification went well, we'd have lots of money to do things. It's not profit, so we're not out to make a profit. We're out to make enough to do the things we want to do. So we worked on the exam for we probably spent a month at least on just on the exam. When we started, we didn't. This is an ironic thing that people don't understand. When we started the PMP exam, there was no PMBOK. Now, PMBOK is our Bible. It's our
It's surprising.
standard. Everybody's surprised. Well, we didn't get our first official PMBOK. I have it in my library until 1996. So it's 12 years after we're already testing people on all these volunteer questions and getting them certified before we even had a PMBOK. So we had to do a little readjusting on the exam after that. But that's the way it took time with 8 body of knowledge areas because we just divided it into the categories, and each one had 40 questions. So we had 320 questions on the first exam. It took all day, and it was all by pencil and paper. We didn't have any automation, feed it in, feed it out. It was all by hand. And once you took it, you could find out in about 6 weeks whether you passed or not. So there was a very slow turnaround. People get anxious, and so we tried to squeeze that down, but for a while there was just 3 or 4 of us grading these tests, and then pretty soon it got out of control. So we got the exam ready to go. And then we had to decide how do we publicize this? How do we get because the engineers are still laughing at us. How do we get this so people think it's worthwhile, that it's worth having? Well, you gotta have people that have it saying it. You gotta have organizations that sponsor it saying it. So, well, we didn't really get that until '95. Actually, it was '94, late '94, and at that time, all of the major corporations in America, the IBMs, the Bechtels, the Motorola's, you name it, all of the major corporations adopted the PMP as their internal certification process. So now all of a sudden we got interest because every corporation in America is saying, "Oh, that's a great thing. We want to bring it in," and the numbers just went vertical. By the time I got to take the exam in 1995, and I'll tell you why about that in a minute. But when I took the exam, there were only 6,000 PMPs. That's after 10 years. 6,000. That's not exactly a home run by any means. And so when that happened with all the corporations, that number just went vertical. And we were getting 10, 15, 20, 30,000 a month. And so we knew we were on to the right thing. So we had that. Now that's the deliverable of what we were going for. We also had to prepare the code of ethics. Now back then it was one page. Now the code of ethics is, I'm told, I haven't seen it lately, is 4 or 5 pages, and it looks like
Hmm.
you're signing away your life. And so we had to do that. We had to do the qualification. How are you going to decide who gets to sit for the exam? You can't just raise your hand and say I want to sit for it. You have to
Hmm.
qualify. Well, I created the qualification standard, and it was 3 categories: a service to the profession, or community service, I think we called it, education. It varies if you got no degree, if you got a bachelor degree, if you got a master's, changes some of the things. And then the third one was, of course, your experience. And that's
Okay.
where we ended up on 3 years experience. That was my fault. That was my mistake. It was not enough. We're too deep into it now to change it. But that's why you get some of these people that they don't really have enough experience, but they've got enough book learning, they can pass the exam. But then if you throw them out to the wolves, their projects don't do so well. So that should have been more like 5, or even 7. But so that's we had to do. And then of course we had to score them, we had to pass them out, we had to handle complaints, and it's big business. It's big business. You got to think when you handle maybe 500,000 a year, it's big business, and it's still run by volunteers. There's still groups of people that do the scoring, we've got more paid staff now. We have 750 paid staff, but when we just desegregate where everybody was international, we got places in Atlanta, we got places in Mexico, we got all these districts or regions they call them. So they have all got their team of people to do all this. So all of that had to be done before we could call it a success. Now, I think, from what I can tell, people now think it's a success, except those that have disagreed from the very beginning. And they still find reason to. I often wonder why they stay a member. But that's another topic. So you see, when we went live in '84, all of us on the committee, we're just talking about the main 5, on the committee were given a letter that said you are not eligible to sit for the exam for 10 years. They
Oh.
were so paranoid about conflict of interest and us being so close to it, they thought we'd cheat. I always thought the code of ethics should catch that. If you want to violate the code of ethics, you certainly could do it. But most people are pretty honest, but they said no, 10 years. So we waited and waited and waited. And finally, I asked my wife if you think I ought to take this exam. 'Cause I hadn't taken an exam for years, and she said, "Well, you're a fool if you don't. And you're one of the creators. I mean, how are you gonna say good things about it if you don't have it?" And I said, "Yeah, that's right. That's true." So I went down to Atlanta and sat with a bunch of AT&T people, and all day. I was in Philadelphia in October, all day long, except I got done in 3 hours with the whole day. And that reminded me how important the actual experience is, because this we didn't even have a PMBOK, for God's sakes. I just knew the right thing to do because I've been doing the wrong thing oftentimes. So that I passed the exam. Uh, 2 of the people on the 5 never took the exam. Never did take the exam. They never capitalized on it like I've done. But the fact of the matter is, I think they were afraid of it. I think they were afraid they couldn't pass. And we have our member number 1 in PMP is Eric Jeanette. Now He was the
Oh,
construction guy from Houston, and he's passed away. So
oh,
he was old when I wasn't old, and so
okay.
he's passed away. And then I have a guy here in Columbus, Ohio, that came to me in '81, no '82, and wanted to know, should I take this? Is it worth it to take it? I said, Gary, I really think it is. I think you'll be happy if you do it. So he did. He sat for it in Philly, and he passed. He's a PMP number 13. So
Oh,
that's the only two numbers I know. I never checked to see what number sequence there were. I'm sure they've gone to some random processing now, just like they do on the member IDs. People used to say, "Oh, I'm member number 100,000." So no, you're not. That's just a number that came out of the machine, so we'd have a way to ID you. It was the dream of Jeanette. I think Jeanette and Gordon Davis was the guy in Atlanta who owned a construction company. He took me under his wing when I joined, and he became a very good friend. And I learned a lot from him. The other two, the pharmaceutical people, I mean, I knew Snyder. Everybody knows Snyder or knew Snyder,
yeah.
but the other two. I never met him. One was a lady and one was a guy, and they came out of the Philadelphia area as well. So they were the key people for a long time. But then what's happened is people, I don't know if they get bored with it or if they don't think they can learn anymore. But I looked at the other day the past presidents of PMI, which I never was. Chapter president, yes, but not. Very few of them are still active.
Okay.
Very few. Not a lot of them are dead. I agree with that. But there, a lot of them. It's just like you got to that president thing, and then you just that's it. You went away.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a shame because they have a lot of knowledge, they have a lot of things they could share with people, but it's amazing how many there aren't that have stayed active. So the certification, uh, we didn't really know. People ask me all the time, did you ever really anticipate that you'd have 1.7 million members? And the answer is no. When we formed the PMP, it really wasn't about money. It was about the profession. So the money became a byproduct later on. I mean, a good byproduct, no doubt about that. But the fact of the matter was, money was never an issue. In fact, as I recall, the fees were much lower back in the 80s and 90s. And so it wasn't about the money. It was about proving to people that it's a special task. It's a special position that you need to be prepared for. And so it went on to be quite effective, and it's created a substructure in industry, and we call them ATPs now. We used to
Hmm.
call them REPs.
Hmm.
And basically, what PMI has done, and I think this is wise, is that they formed this REP, Registered Education Provider, and you had to pay a fee just to have the right to give certificates for the training that you produce. So that you couldn't just be a random
Hmm.
guy. I think I'll teach this. And so they were trying to use that as a quality control method to make sure really just the good instructors were going to be responsible for educating the base. And that was fairly successful, but it wasn't long before the cheaters came in, people that learned how to cheat on the exam or on the application. Uh, Even now, unfortunately, even now, I occasionally see in the paper, in the foreign tip, not I don't see it in the U.S. anymore, but an offer to for $500 to take the exam for you and get your certificate.
Yeah.
And people were doing it. People were doing it. They're just as guilty as the people doing it, but they're doing it. Well, PMI has a whole legal
But I
group
think
now.
as member and as volunteers, our responsibility to report it as well to PMI. So, whenever I receive such kind of messages, although I'm a PMP, but I think when they send the message, they don't check there's a PMP mentioned in front of my name, and they send such
Yeah,
message, and then I report it to PMI, right?
yeah.
And this is
No,
kind of a message I'm
that's
receiving from there. Yeah, so it happens. I agree.
That's true, and some people were. It started out be Nigeria for some reason they have a reputation of that, and then it went to India. Now India still does it. We still catch some of them in India. They figured out a way to, but most people now are aware. We've kind of publicized it. Don't fall for this. Don't take the test. You get your PMP, and so it requires quite a bit of legal involvement. Out of our 800 employees, there's several lawyers. I mean,
Okay.
they keep lawyers pretty busy.
All right. So, Leil, I think this very fascinating because for many of us today, project management is recognized as a well-established profession with globally accepted standards and certifications. But from what you were describing, it was a very different landscape. And let me just tell you that I had so many questions, about the defining moment for you. What was your experience? People have sent me those questions to ask you, but I think in answering my one of the question, and because my very first question, you have answered all those points. So that's great. Um, I think the second thing we would like to know from you, as you have an extensive experience, right? That what were some of the biggest challenges project manager faced during those early years?
To me, the big, I don't know if my God, well, they're all dead, so they don't get a vote. I think it was public relations. I think it was validating that this was worth doing, and I think that took a while. I mean, when we did the first test, we only had 55 people sit for the exam, and back then we only did it once a year. Whenever we used to call it the symposium, wherever the national symposium was, that's when you would take the test. And we did that for about 5 or 6 years until we saw the interest was picking up to where we couldn't do 200, 300 people at the national symposium. So we started to allow off-site. So we'd had, like I went to an AT&T program. I taught over 3,000 IBM people in IBM's facilities. So we made it so it was as easy as possible to get a chance to sit for the exam. But you really had to be careful because in the early days nobody really cared. By the time we hit the 90s, mid 90s, it had established itself as a reasonably good criteria. But what really changed it was that same opportunity where corporations began to welcome us in. And so we got, for example, there was a company called ESI, Educational Services Institute, out of Arlington, Virginia, and they linked up with George Washington University and created a 7 course curriculum. 1 week, all 1 week, so 7 weeks of training. And if you finish all that training, of course, you have the credibility if you finish the training, but you also get from George Washington University a master's certificate in project management. I mean, it's a big deal. In fact, they wanted me to come teach at Western Carolina, and I said I don't have a master's degree. And they said I thought you got one from George Washington. I said I did, but I picked it up and gave it says certificate. I just focused on the project management courses. I didn't take all the humanities and the language. Just the, and he said, oh, that's all right if you have a certificate. So they I keep stalling them because I don't want to go. But if they ask me to come teach at Western Carolina, I might do it just because it's something I haven't done before at the college level. But that's that's how it got to be reputable. Now that's unfortunately that same uh, quality value causes people to do crazy things, and start all of a sudden we got to get the automated scoring thing. We got to get the if we do that, then we got to get the you got to watch them. Got to have proctors watching them. They move their head a certain way. That's it. You're done. So that's one of the things when we went to in-home testing. That sounds great when you say it fast, but the fact of the matter is, it created a lot of problems. And we did it for the people because it was during COVID, and we had all these people who wanted to take the test, but we couldn't hold tests anymore. So we said, okay, well, you can take it at home, and you have to take it under very rigid conditions. We'll have to have a proctor to make sure you don't have stuff written all over your arms, and so that's why we started to do it. Now, when people talk to me, they start to talk about in home, and my advice is don't do it. Don't do it at home because you're going to be under very rigid. I mean, I've heard people complain when I said just turn your head this way, you're out. That I've heard people say, all I really did was kind of turn like that, and that's it, you're done. And so it has created a benefit for the in-home testing, but there's a price you pay. And I think most people now gravitated back to the test centers. And I've never been in one of those test centers, so I don't know how close everybody is and that sort of thing. But I know we don't really, I hate to say catch cheaters. We don't really find cheaters in the testing centers that I'm aware of. There's some that get canceled in there too, just like Proctor would at your home. But basically, what we tried to do was make it as easy as possible for anyone who wanted to take it to submit an application. And if you're applied, then you can schedule it and take it. If you fail it the first time, and believe me, if your audience is listening and you fail the first time, don't sweat it. A lot of people do. A lot of people do. Some of us adult learners haven't tested for so long that we just get nervous. You
Mm.
just get your hands get all sweaty and you know say you do silly things. You take too long on each one because you want to make sure you get it right. And then in the meantime, you don't get to 20 questions. Those are all counted as missed. And so you gotta do timing. Timing is very critical. But I think that the numbers are going to continue to go up. In the international marketplace, they're probably in quantification, they're probably 8 to 10 years behind us. In other words, I was in Rome recently, and they were doing some testing there, so I got a chance to go and take a look. They only had about, I think there were 6 or 7 people testing. And in Rome, the number is like a couple thousand. And
Okay.
so but now it's just getting to be, now, same way with Greece. I spent a lot of time in Greece, and they got a lot of them in Greece. So they've hit it kind of heavily. And this guy in the Middle East, I think he's in Saudi, he puts out, you've probably seen it if you get the newsletter. Uh, he puts out a reading of all the members of all the certificates by country. And so if you ever want to know how many do we have, this thing I recorded I just recorded before we got on. It shows that we have 535,000 PMPs in China, and we have 455,000 in America. So we don't even have the most. But they test thousands at a time. Last year they had one test that was 2,000 people at the same time, 6 floors of a building to do tests. So they're emphasizing. I don't know for what reason. Our part of our reason is one. Pierre would always say this. It's always to make better project managers. But the secondary thought, which is almost as important right now, is that it gets you a job. Uh,
Yes.
Everywhere you go, U.S., especially North America, but South America is getting that way too. You look at a want ad, and most of them will say PMP preferred.
Hmm. Yes,
Some
you
will say
mentioned.
PMP desired. So that
Hmm.
one gives you, maybe I can talk my way into this one, but the one that says preferred, you might as
Yeah.
well not bother. And that's gotten to be a little bit of a problem, which has driven more people who might be happy with what they're doing, but know they're not going to be able to get another job without a PMP, so now they're getting them. So some people get them that don't really need them, but they think they'll need them. It's kind of an insurance policy. And now, like all good things turn bad over time. Now the bad thing is we got too many. And I'm hearing a lot of complaints now that I go into interview and I've got a PMP and they don't care. They said I got 20 PMPs lined up to look at this job. I can't.
Hmm.
So all of a sudden, what got you jobs 6 months ago, 6 years ago, now is not any better than a bachelor's degree in college. So we're trying. That's one of the reasons we're trying to do this advanced thing, but we're not going to. You won't deal with the numbers for that. But I think that my take is, and always has been, is if I stay current with the evolving body of knowledge, I'll be much more employable than someone who gets their PMP and then sits on their butt and doesn't take any additional training. So I don't know how many PMI classes I've taken. I don't use any of them. But the fact of the matter is, if I get in a conversation on a project and that topic comes up, I know enough I can talk about it.
Yeah.
When AI came out, I've taken all the AI courses except one. The one that's got an AI into it, PM something AI. It's a it's a killer class. It's $600 to take the class. So I talked to them to get it to me free, and so I'm halfway through it. I've been taking it for 6 months. I'm halfway through it. It is a bear. And it's gonna be. I tell my people, I get this thing. If after I get the PMP, what would you get next? I said I'd get that AI course. I said it's a hot course, and it's one that when you say you got it, that's gonna open some doors for you. So, but it's expensive. I really cannot.
Incredible. Yeah.
But it's a week long. I mean, I like I say, I'm halfway through. You got a workbook, you got all kinds of questions, and so I'm only getting it so I can say I have it, so people will respect me. And
Okay.
so that's
That
but
also matters
it's a tough.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough class. I never did any work in that IT AI kind of environment, so it's a lot of new stuff for me. But
Mhm.
it's well worth it. And I tell people, and this is they got to pay, so I'm reluctant to say you got to break loose with 600 or 800 bucks and take that class, but you'll regain that money in no time.
Hmm. And that's incredible, Lee, because many people uh, see this certification as a trademark, right? That of trust. That if someone is a PMP, they have the PMP mindset. They can handle the projects, they can handle the programs, right? They can solve the problem. So this is something the trust bring with this certification, and I would say it's incredible. And many of see the PMP credential is something that has always existed. But hearing that it began with a simple idea, and as we heard you before, that a group of people willing to act on that idea is truly inspiring and formed it. And I got the opportunity to meet Jim Snyder and you, both of you, actually. So in my previous years interaction. So yeah, that's an incredible experience, I would say. So Lee, many people are watching today are either actually preparing for their PMP certifications or are in the early stages of their project management career. So, what advice would you give your younger self if you were starting your career today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I look back on that to think, what would I you're not going to like this answer. I was going to say, what would I do differently? And I don't think I would do anything differently. I planned from the time I got out of school. I planned where I was going to be. It took a little longer than I thought it would, but where I was going to be, I went through the steps. I went through the different organizational components. I taught things. I did everything. So I guess my advice would be, the first thing you need to do is get enough information that you're confident in your knowledge base. In other words, don't be afraid if somebody's going to ask you a question. Be ready. You gotta be you gotta act smart. I mean, I'm not as smart as I act, but you gotta act smart because people respect that. So spend the early years honing your skills. Okay. I mean, you got to know how to schedule. You got to know how to budget. You got to know risk management. Those are all things that no matter if you're a project manager or some other kind of manager, you need these skills. So I spent the first up till 77, so about 10 years preparing my skills. And at 10 years, then I started moving where I wanted to go. And once you do that, what you got to do is when you think you've got your skills honed, that you really feel confident that you're good at what you do, then you have to decide where do I want to go from here? What do I want to do from here? And so I recognized quite early I did not want to work in a corporate setting. It was too restrictive. I'm a kind of a freewheeler guy. And so as soon as I had a chance to leave GE, I left and went into a different, not a corporate, but a nonprofit, and did a lot of work in the National Laboratory. I have memories from that job because in that job, you get to do a lot of creative things. You're not just doing what somebody else tells you and you know how. You're getting to think about, well, how would you solve that problem. So I love the environment of the National Laboratory. And then when that job grew bigger and bigger, I could see that's what I wanted. I don't want to work. I've never ever wanted to work. Physical work. I tried that once for 4 hours and then quit. I don't do physical work, but mental work, yeah, that's for me. So I spent the rest of my time from 80, really about 88. That's when I really made the conversion to independent thinking kind of a role and problem solving. The organizations pay good money for problem solving,
Yeah.
if you're independent. If you're in a corporate, you get screwed just like everybody else does, because
Hmm.
all they care about is the bottom line. But in a nonprofit, they care about excitement and new items and new thinking, new innovation. And now we're on a big innovation push in PMI. Innovation, innovation. Well, if the people give you time to innovate, well, we've got some good people that can do that. And so I would say, and then the other thing I would say is keep current with the PMBOK. It's going to change every 4 years. Now, this year is a bigger change because this AI thing just kind of shook everything up. But you need to be able to say, oh, yeah, I know all of that new stuff that over the last 4 years have come into the process. Because I mean, this AI is not the end of it. Right behind AI is quantum computing. I mean, there's so much behind. Now, I just read an article in the paper yesterday that some companies have laid off 30% of their labor because of the use of AI. Now that really throws right in the face of my comment to people that it'll never take your job, but if somebody who knows it better than you do, they'll take your job. But don't blame it on AI. That's your fault for not learning what to do with it. So, but this article, I didn't like the article at all because it really puts the fear of God in people that it is going to take my job. So we'll see how that goes. It's a big thing right now, no doubt
I
about it.
agree.
But I would say you've got to stay current. And when I say current, what I always have done is always try to look about 2 years into the future and think to yourself now, look, here's where we are. What are we still missing? What do we need to have? And then when you decide what that is, prepare so that when it comes, you go, oh yeah, I know how to do that. That's you got to stay ahead of management. Management wants to think they know it. They don't know jack in some cases, and so you got to understand. I want to be when AI came about. Now I got caught a little bit of sleep on that one, but when AI came about in Atlanta at the summit, I had already started taking classes because I always knew it was coming. I worked with John Signal, if you know John.
Yeah.
He's a very interesting guy,
Mm.
very sophisticated in terms of AI, and that's I was running with him at the time. He said you better get up to speed on this AI stuff. And I said no, you better get up to speed. So I did, and thank God I did because even Pierre said, "How did you know this much?" I said, "Oh, I've been taking these classes for a couple of years."
He's surprised.
So you have to, and the other thing I want to give people, because don't take this as bad advice, because it's good advice for me. If you're good at what you do, tell people. Nobody's going to tell you. If you're good at what you do, tell people. That's one of the reasons I like LinkedIn. If I've done something good and exciting, I post it on LinkedIn, and 120,000 people know about it right away.
Mm.
And I've learned that clear back at GE. I was really good at what I did, and nobody ever say anything to me. So I started going into my boss and saying, "Did you see this that I did?" And he said, "Oh, you did that." I said, "Yeah, I do this all the time." So I'm very outspoken. I know it drives Pierre and some of those guys crazy, but I think if you got good people, you got to know who they are, and if they don't tell you, you'll never know.
Mm.
You'll get the occasional rising star like a Miracle Pinto or Ricardo Vargas. You get some like that that we know them because we know them. And frankly, I don't know. I know Ricardo's really really good. I don't know America that well. I know him as a person. He's a great guy. But if you want to be successful, that you have to show people how good you are
Yeah.
because
Agree.
otherwise you keep toiling away, getting the average raises every year and bitching about it. Well, I'm worth a lot more than this. Well, unfortunately, in big corporations, that ain't the way it works. So I think the more you can show people what you're capable of, I think the better off you'll be.
I agree. So I think, Lee, one thing I have noticed throughout our conversation that your journey has been much more about developing a certification. I think it has been helping establish project management as a respected profession, which is an extraordinary legacy you have left. So, Lee, I would like to end our conversation with one final question. Imagine
Okay.
a young project management professional discovers our this conversation on a YouTube channel, right? Somewhere 10 years from now. And perhaps they have just begun their PMP journey and they are leading their very first project. If there is one message you hope they remember from our conversation today, what would it be?
Oh, that's an easy one because we're screwing it up right now. Uh, I would teach them. I would tell them to learn the basics. The basic project management, the triple constraint, the timing, learn the basics. We've got so many people now with PMPs that don't know the basics. And I don't know how I don't know how you move in a project management circle without being able to talk about the basics. Because all the rest of it is just adder and fluff. Every project, it's the triple constraint drives everything. And if you learn that, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. That's what I did. I learned, I never knew anything about project management when I got out of school. So I knew I had to learn it. So that's what I did.
Great. Thank you, Lee, not only for spending this hour with us, but for the contribution you have made to our profession over so many years. The PMP credential has opened doors, transformed careers, inspired millions of project professionals around the world. And today you are reminding us that behind every great profession are people with the courage to imagine something better and the determination to make it happen. So, on behalf of everyone joining us from around the world, thank you for sharing your story. your wisdom, and your legacy. It has truly been an honor.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I hope that people take what I said and think about how does it apply to me. This just wasn't for the fun of it. This was for your edification to do a better job and to get higher in what you want to do.
Great. And thank you to everyone who joined us for this special episode of Conversation with Shenila. I hope today's conversation has given you a deeper appreciation, not only for the history of the PMP credential, but also for the people whose vision helped shape the profession we proudly belong to today. If this conversation inspired you, please share it with your colleagues and fellow projects professionals so that more people can hear this remarkable story. We will soon going to share it on our YouTube channel also. Thank you for being part of our growing community. Until our next conversation, keep learning, keep leading, and keep the conversation going. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.